Greetings! You're here because you're looking for an easy-to-use tool for evaluating risk. The identification we did in the last video, but now you need a little help analyzing it in a way that's going to make sense for your business, and you don't want to spend an arm and a leg doing that. I'm Dr. Cynthia Kalina Kaminsky, and I help businesses of all sizes identify, analyze, and then mitigate their risk. And in doing this, I have a simple tool that I love to use because it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. In fact, it's quite simple to use once you set it up, and it provides meaningful insight. So what is this tool? It's called a risk matrix. What a risk matrix helps you do is to visually identify just how bad something really is for your business. It looks at how likely is it that this risk I'm looking at will actually happen, and second, if it does happen, how severe are the repercussions going to be? By using a predetermined way of evaluating just how bad something could be for you, you can compare risks across your entire business. And that allows you to figure out which one gets worked on first, second, and third. You only have so many resources. However, you do need to make the time to figure out what can get in the way of your critical work. Not all the work that you perform, but the most critical work that the customers depend on. The hardware and software that make and move things, like a machine that absolutely must make good parts each and every time, or you can't make shipments. Risks could be interruptions to being able to provide great service. Things like having only one expert on site or in your entire business, but all the clients want them on their projects. Also, all the outside activities that connect to your inside activities, like your suppliers or the trucking that takes your products to the next part of your supply chain. All these things you have very little control over, but they can make or break you. By identifying what those risks are before they become issues, you then have time to choose to do something about them or not. Having a very small business means not having a lot of resources, so you might want to simplify this 5x5 matrix even more. For example, instead of having 5 levels of severity, maybe you could work with only 3 at this time. No problem. Adjust this matrix to best work for your business. The trick is, the matrix needs to stay the same no matter where in your business you're looking at a specific type of risk. So what do I mean by that? If you want to know what risks could upset, say, your ability to do business, then every risk that deals with that, whether it comes from a new product offering or a new piece of sales software or a new facility, the same risk matrix is used because you're looking at the same end result. What is it going to do to my business? This way we can compare risks and choose which risk to work on first. As I go through, I've got to figure out some way to get my risk measurements into these squares. That means I need to have definitions for them. So here are my risk level definitions. 0 to 1, easy to fix. I'm just not going to worry about it if something lands here. 1 to 2, I have to worry about it a bit because these problems can cause harm to my business, but hey, it's nothing I can't handle. 2 to 3, now I am really worried and I'm losing sleep. We need to fix or mitigate this problem now before we continue any further. Remember, for severity, we're figuring out where to put something on the vertical scale. So great, we've got the vertical scale, but how likely is that risk going to happen? Well, once we figure that out, we're going to move the marker to the right. Here, the risk I'm evaluating has a 75% chance of showing up. I get that probability from people on my team or that I know who have dealt with this before. And because I'm in the red zone, I am worried and I am losing sleep. So we'd better get into the risk mitigation decision making quick. If we need or are ready to handle a bit more complexity, we can expand our matrix back to that 5x5. Now, when you look online or perhaps even in your industry, you're going to find matrices that have a variety of levels of severity. I've seen them that go up to 10 in medical devices, and that is something that then becomes industry standard. But let's say that right now, this 5x5 is good with you. My levels are now more detailed. 0 to 1, well, that's still easy to handle. I'm not going to worry about it. But 1 to 2 risks that show up, they are going to require a bit more repair work. But let's face it, the business can usually recover without the customer even knowing that anything went wrong. So I'm still not going to worry about it too much. I don't like them, but at least they're things I know we can handle. If a 2 to 3 risk shows up, now we need some help from outside our company in order to understand what's going on. A larger company, perhaps a mid-cap, maybe you have an expert on site. But if I'm small, I'm going to need a little extra help, and it's got to come from outside. That outside help, it may be only an hour call with someone or perhaps even a series of calls, but it's nothing too big. But come to 3 and 4, and we're getting into serious problems. These could cause bodily harm or damage to the property, and this level is also beginning to cost us some serious money. And we don't want to deal with anything that has a reasonable problem of occurring. If we get to 4 to 5, it's all hands on deck. We need to avoid, eliminate, transfer, or significantly reduce the risk before moving forward. Let's face it, we could be endangering our employees, our customers, our property, and we don't want any of that. Easy enough? We're ready to go, right? Well, almost. Notice those wishy-washy words like some and more. Everyone is going to have a different opinion of what those words really mean. And if you're ready to handle a bit more detail, let's put a bit more in. As we go through each and every severity level, we're now writing in what concerns us. These are things that, yes, they already concern us, but we probably don't have a way to make sure everyone in our small company knows exactly what to watch out for or is even aware that we're concerned about it. Now we can start creating that knowledge. In each level, you'll see a detail such as, if a risk falls into this level, it would be because of this or that. For example, if a level 3 risk appears, we expect that risk to damage the business in some way. To remain in level 3 and not go higher into a level 4, the financial impact must be small. Or if there's no financial impact, then the resulting loss of our customer base is very limited. If there is no customer loss or financial impact, then perhaps this risk causes delays in shipments to our customers because processes have to be reworked or tested before we can get up and running smoothly again. Or perhaps the risk occurrence has a negative impact on our business image that we now have to fix. Any one of these things showing up would put the risk in the 3rd severity level. But there are still a few wishy-washy words in here, right? It's better because I know what I'm looking for now, but I still might evaluate risk different than anyone else in my company. So let's try a few numbers out. This matrix is for the business not yet ready for the fuller 5x5 detail, and this is okay. Do whatever works for your business, not what you think others want to see. The exception is if the detail is legally or contractually required. Even in a contract situation, though, an auditor will often come in to look to see if what you have is what you use consistently and effectively, not if it's as detailed as another company's matrix. Here we've listed all the categories that we worry about. If you have fewer, then cut the list down. If you have more, make sure that the new entry isn't captured somewhere else in another column. For example, in this matrix, what do you think about combining quality into performance? Would it work for you or not? Why? Now we're going to look at that more detailed matrix severity level definition. Even the name gets a little complicated. But notice how numbers start to make it exactly clear what each and every level in each category means. In this definition matrix, if we have between 5 and 25% more overtime required in order to get all the work done because the risk showed up, then we're going to have to put the risk measurement for performance impact into that level 2 to 3. Now, usually we just refer to it as the higher number, so it would be a level 3 risk, and we're trying to make sure we avoid a level 4, and we're going to work to figure out if we need to get it down to a level 2. Take a look at the risk severity matrix for project management in the Department of Defense. This matrix is used by everyone who's a project or a program manager, and it's usually used on new designs. With all the hundreds and thousands of projects going on inside of DoD every year, every evaluation has to be easily understood, hence the standardization. Only 3 categories are used because everything rolls up into either a risk for cost and budget, technical performance, as in does it work according to the specs, or schedule. In some places, there are entries that must be made by a project manager and guidance is given. Under this level 4 cost, the project manager has to enter in the amount that equals 10% of the project budget that project manager is working on. How in the world do we start to rank things? We looked at continuous late delivery, that's late delivery because of us, and we noted that that was a 4 in severity. And it had about an 80% chance of happening because we just don't have the standard processes up and running yet. If you take the 4 times the 0.8, we're going to the maximum for each square. Then we get a risk measurement of 3.2, which means nothing all by itself. So let's take a look at our other risks that we decided to look at. Lack of training also causes us some problems, and it's critical to our business. It ends up in a level 3 severity and a 60% probability. 3 times 0.6 equals 1.8. So we're less than the 3.2. We're starting to get a little prioritization, but let's look at our next risk piece. Here, we've got some sort of weather event that could cause a risk to our production because it could destroy part of the building and perhaps part of our ability to actually produce anything. Level 4, because we're not expecting total destruction, but it's only at a 40% probability. Yes, we're in Tornado Alley, but we don't think that there's a higher probability than 40% that our building would ever get struck, even with the increasingly large tornadoes and the increasing activity. So my risk is at a 4 for severity times 0.4 for 40% probability, and that gives me 1.6. So notice, in the production destruction, because of a tornado, my risk level is a 4. Underneath lack of training, it's at a 3. However, when you look at the probability of occurrence, that's what kicks the risk up. So you can't just look at only one of these things, the severity or the probability, and then make decisions. You have to look at them both. So right now, the ranking is our continuous late delivery is the first and foremost thing we have to fix. Our lack of training is second, and the tornado readiness for that risk is third. Have one more though. What if our product ends up on an air transport that crashes? Now, we're not talking about total destruction, but we're talking about a crash that impacts our ability to deliver product. Well, we look at the risk as in a 4. We think some of it will be destroyed, not all of it. We do have others to ship. It's not our plane, so we're not in control of that, but we think it really only has a 0.1% chance of happening. Now notice that I used 0.1 here. What I really should have used is 0.2, right? Because although I think in my project that it's only a 0.1% chance, I've been using as a standard always the upper limit of probability for the square. So it should have been 0.2, which would have made it a 0.8. But you know what? We're not in control of this at all. We don't handle the air transport, so we're not even going to look at this. We will be prepared. We'll have a little extra stuff in our warehouse, but the main risk is still that continuous late delivery that we have. So it's going to be first. Or is it? What if the late delivery is because I have new people all the time coming in and they're not trained in order to be able to handle the processes? Well, in that case, then I want to attack the lack of training first because that may take care of the late delivery for us right away. These things have to be talked through, and they need to make logical sense when you're acting on them. But all else being equal, this is a way to start to rate which one comes first, second, third, as far as whether or not you're going to work on them. So the final piece, just to keep everyone on the same page and not confused when a risk occurs, is accompanying documentation. You can't get away from it, but you can make it quick and easy. You can make a quick template like this one to share with everyone so that you're not reinventing the wheel. Plus, it takes more time to go in and figure out what someone else did with a different template. Use one, have it be universal, make it easy on yourself. Share it and then fill it in with bullet points. For the title, just put the same title you had on the matrix. For the impacts, bullet point what the problem is. How much of a financial hit are you going to be taking? How much will it impact your performance? In what area? Is it on-time performance, in other words, late delivery? Or perhaps it's a quality measure. Filling out all of these pieces means that when a crisis occurs, you don't have to think about what to do because, hey, you're in the middle of a crisis and you don't have time to. All you have to do is refer to this piece of paper. It tells who's responsible for what, and then you just go do it. There are a couple of terms in here that you do need to know. CAP stands for Corrective Action Plan. If something goes wrong and you're in a defense supply chain or a medical supply chain, the prime contractor or the end customer is going to definitely want to know what you're going to do and when it's going to be done. This template helps. You may have to adjust to unique circumstances, but the where to start and the what needs to happen, well, that's already defined. Control means what metric shows you if risk is going to happen. If you consistently have a problem with late deliveries, if there's a trend that starts to show that you're getting into being late all the time, or enough that customers are going to start to leave, you need to get the risk of late deliveries under control. The control is the metric, and the metric is percentage of on-time deliveries that you make. The risk is that you're going to lose customers. You're on your way to bigger contracts with larger companies. Once you have your categories and levels set up, the risk matrix almost becomes a fill-in-the-blanks exercise. Almost. You must have meaningful analysis to back up your choices, and you do need to know what you're doing when you assign the probabilities. You can't just guess. You need some sort of expert opinion, or at least educated guess. Just in case an auditor shows up, you now have the documentation that's needed. If you want a bit of help mitigating risk or figuring out how to identify it and then analyzing it, please sign up for a free 30-minute session at www.aligningstrategy.com. This is the same place where all of the videos are so that you can go back and review any that you want. Contact me if you have any questions or if there's a topic that you'd like to see covered. Until next video, have a wonderful and risk-free day.